Hi there, and welcome to Elixir 101, a channel where we take a scientific approach to identify life's elixirs. Alright, in today's episode, we'll be looking at a paper quite recently posted on cell metabolism, which is a short article with really interesting infographics. So, the paper is titled Daily Fasting Improves Health and Survival in Male Mice Independent of Diet Composition and Calories. Sounds quite interesting, doesn't it? Especially looking at the mice here. Alright, so eating patterns rather than a diet composition influence longevity regulation, which is the premise of the entire paper. So, a prolonged daily fasting is associated with daily onset of liver pathologies. So, in summary, this is what the paper has to say. So, quoting the authors, here we directly compare in mice the two diets used in the primate studies, focusing on three paradigms, that is ad libitum, which is a normal diet, a 30% calorie restriction or CR, a single meal feeding, that is the MF, which accounts for differences in energy density and caloric intake consumed by the AL mice. So, MF and CR regimes enhance longevity regardless of diet composition, which alone had no significant impact within the feeding regimens. Like CR animals, MF mice ate quickly, imposing periods of extended daily fasting on themselves that produced significant improvements in morbidity and mortality compared with the ad libitum groups. Now, the CR associated mechanisms are likely relevant to human health and longevity, and meal strategies mimicking the daily fasting periods that occur with the CR might be readily translated to humans if clear health benefits are observed due to such periods of fasting. So, an interesting study that was part of this paper that was seen was that in patients with breast cancer, a fasting period greater than 13 hours resulted in low risk of breast cancer recurrence compared with those that fasted less than 13 hours. Now, erratic feeding behaviors and associated lifestyles among adults, such as spreading caloric intake over 15 hours or longer, can have detrimental health consequences. So, for this study, NI used a naturally sourced diet, while the WIS, so these are basically two institutes that have two different feeding diet compositions. So these were used as control groups that were given for both the groups, that is the caloric restriction and the MF groups. So these resulted in differences in the macronutrient content of the diets that were used. So a brief about the kind of diet that was being given was that the diets contained 60% carbohydrates by weight. However, compared with the WIS diet, the NIA diet was higher in protein, that is around 17.3% versus 13.1% by weight, slightly higher in fiber, lower in fat, and lower in sucrose. So, sucrose is a disaccharide of fructose and glucose that has been part of the human diet for centuries. Now, excessive consumption of sucrose has been linked to metabolic disorders beyond just weight gain, where elevated fructose in presence of glucose favors lipogenesis in the liver, leading to fatty liver and associated pathologies. So, if you look at this paragraph, you get a brief idea about how these diets influence the two groups, that is the MF and the CR. So, when survival was analyzed by diet type, there were no significant differences between the curves for both the ad libitum, MF, and the CR. So, indicating that the diet composition had no impact on survival. So, despite the difference in diet composition and caloric content, so the results of the study revealed that eating pattern is what matters rather than the composition of the diet. So, the MF and 30% CR appear to reduce and or delay the rate of occurrence of amyloid deposits in the brain and other age-related pathologies at death. So, now there's a lot of these infographics and graphs that are scattered across the paper, which gives really good insight about how irrespective of what the diet composition was, just based on the feeding times and the kind of fasting that was that these mice were subjected to, you can see that the longevity improved whether it was the WIS diet or the NIA diet. So again, these are just graphs showing compositions, that is diet consisting predominantly the carbohydrates versus predominantly sucrose, not really having that much of an impact on the age of the mice. So this is a scorecard that was given just based off of the kind of health of the organ that was taken from mice after the mice died, and it's showing how good the conditions were, or how similar the conditions were, despite having two completely different diets. And also, if you just compare the ad libitum groups from the MF or the CR groups, the age is different. So at the bottom of the table, if you see, the time of death varied a lot in terms of the weeks that mice survived, but the health was pretty much the same of the organs at the time of death, which indicates that these animals lived a long life with really good health and without any loss of functions of organs. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this paper, and I highly encourage you to go through the entire paper to get a lot more insight about what individual graphs indicate. But the take home message again, of course this was done in mice, but it shows that quite interestingly, diet really does not have that much of an impact on longevity as much as the duration of fasting does. Alright, so moving on to another article. Again, this was from Cell Metabolism, quite a short article. So this paper titled Dietary Restriction Extends Lifespan Through Metabolic Regulation of Innate Immunity. So this paper in general has a lot of pathways. So if you're not really a science geek, I would recommend skipping through the pathways and just understanding in brief how the innate immunity has quite a big significant impact on the longevity. Although it may seem quite obvious, it's worth going through the paper to find out how. Alright, so the summary as given by the paper is that basically the study was done in worm, which is C. elegans. So in the study, the dietary restrictions, that is DR, extended the lifespan by modulating a conserved innate immunity pathway that is regulated by the P38 signaling and transcription factor ATF7. So longevity from the DR depends on the P38 ATF7 immunity being intact but downregulated to a basal level. So basically you need this pathway to be there, but it has to be completely deregulated to the most basal level. So at that stage it accelerated aging when hyperactive, influences lifespan independently of pathogen exposure, and is activated by nutrients independently of the mTORC1, which is a major dietary restriction mediator. Now longevity from the reduced insulin IGF-1 signaling, that is again something that you come across a lot, which is the IGF-1 signaling pathway, also involves the P38 ATF7 downregulation, which means that it's not just dietary restriction but also the IGF-1 signaling pathway that directly links to the P38 signaling pathway, downregulation of which leads to a longer lifespan in these worms. The highlighted segments just show what I found interesting in the paper. Again, you can just go through it. Maybe you find it interesting, maybe not. Just going forward now, another interesting point is that aging increases the chronic innate immune activity and inflammation, which is a major risk factor for age-related pathologies that include diabetes, cancer, neurodegenerative and cardiovascular diseases. So obesity or an unhealthy diet can reprogram the innate immune system to a long-term inflammatory state. So again, this further increases predisposition to age-related disease. So by contrast, in mammals, the dietary restriction seems to reduce chronic immunity and inflammation. So basically, inflammation is not really good for the body, and this pathway is responsible for that. Now, if you don't have any inflammation when there is any pathogenic attack, this can be detrimental to the system, which is why if you see in the summary, they state that reducing it to the basal level is all that is needed to improve your longevity. So it keeps your inflammation in check and also is ready to fight any kind of pathogen that is invading the system. They found that the dietary restriction and the IGF-1 pathway are intertwined in an unexpected way. That is, the RIAS induced reduction in feeding appears to lead to a dietary restriction like state, as suggested by lower levels of the P38 pathway activity. Now, DR like state appears to contribute to the IGF-1 reduction in the pathway and the lifespan extension. So RIS and DR both increase the mean lifespan to a greater proportional extent when the baseline activity of the P38 pathway immunity is increased. Now, obviously, mammals are far more complex than a worm with respect to the regulation of growth, behavior, and appetite, and the sophistication of the innate immune system. But what is being stated is that it is important to note that the pathways that have been studied here are largely conserved, including the regulation of the innate immunity functions by the P38 pathway, and again of the FOXO growth factor signals. So, understanding of how the P38 pathway is regulated by nutrients and bacterial signals and feeding by the DAF1 may reveal new possibilities about how the human appetite, immunity, and longevity are influenced. So this is just a brief of one of the pathways that I found. So you can ignore all the DAF1 parts. You can just see that DR, which is the dietary restriction, is linked to the mTORC pathway as well as the P38 pathway. Finally, if you see that downregulation of most of these lead to finally an increased lifespan, whereas at the time of an infection, a lifespan is decreased mainly because there is an increase in the P38 levels. So going forward, there's a lot of these graphical representations about the various different kinds of signaling pathways that have been studied in the entire paper. Now there's very good emphasis on something known as the SEK1 pathway. Now this again is just based off of the signaling pathway that is being studied extensively in this paper. Now I won't get into details of it. Feel free to just have a discussion about it in maybe the comments, or just write to me. Maybe give me your thoughts about what you really think about how the SEK1 pathway is being affected by the P38 signaling. And again, some more infographics, just feel free to go through them and let me know what you infer out of them. So that's pretty much it in today's episode. Hope you guys found something interesting out of it, and if you did, make sure you leave a thumbs up, and of course post your thoughts, opinions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.